I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Can I have a motion that the agenda for June 26, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented? Councillor Chenard,
Okay, I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda.
thank you.
As
All in
presented.
favor? Opposed? That is carried. Could I may have a motion, please, that the minutes of June 12, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented? Mayor Zahara, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, this morning we have two delegations. The first one up is Yellowhead Regional Library. Mr. Kevin Dodds, would you please step up? And before we start, this is Kevin. I'll get the council to introduce themselves.
Okay,
In
thank
case you
you.
don't know them.
Councillor Jake Sharp, and another.
Jackie Curry.
Troy Sorensen.
Crystal Meyer.
Kevin Zahara.
Jenna Wilkinson.
Trevor Bevan.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Mayor Zahara and Deputy Mayor Bevan and councillors. Thank you very much for having me out. As you said, I'm Kevin Dodds. I'm the director of Yellowhead Regional Library. And just to take a few minutes to bring you information about Yellowhead Regional Library, and while I'm speaking, I'll talk a little bit about some of the statistics we have of how well used your library in Edson is. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, because I can talk forever, but I won't. And I'm just going to take the time just to give you an introduction about Yellowhead Regional Library. So I know that you have in your packages a copy of the paper presentation I'll be speaking to. And if you've had an opportunity to read it, then maybe I'll just be able to go through it quite quickly. What was I going to say? I'm losing my thought. That's all right. I'll just dive right into it. On the first page is talking about sharing resources and creating capacity. Well, the whole notion of a regional library system is because municipal councils and school divisions, in Yellowhead's case, have gotten together and decided they want to have a regional library system. So the regional library system is formed, and then between the system headquarters and the member libraries of the regional library system, we're all working quite closely together to provide a solid level of service to residents in all of the communities. So we're one big collaboration. So I know under the Municipal Government Act, they're talking about intermunicipal collaboration frameworks and that. You've been involved in one for many, many years through your membership in the Yellowhead Regional Library. The other sort of overarching purpose for a regional library system is to provide services that will allow the staff in your municipal library to concentrate on services to the public, so background services we can do, and also to bring services to the communities that an individual municipal library could not afford on their own. So we're pooling resources from, in the case of Yellowhead, 55 municipalities to create services that are, I won't say exactly the same, but are very similar to what a resident in the two big libraries, two big cities in Edmonton and Calgary provide for their residents. So that's essentially what a regional library system does in general. The second page talks about membership and governance. So as you can see, it says it is a collaboration. So the membership of the regional library system, I'm going to skip to the bottom under governance. Your municipality, you as a council, although it was a council from many years ago, has entered into an agreement, a legal agreement with the other 55 municipalities, plus 3 school divisions, to create, govern, and finance a regional library system. So it is a legal agreement between you and the other municipalities. It's structured under the Libraries Act and complies with the requirements in the Libraries Act. However, you've created Yellowhead, so we're not an independent body. We are you. Simple as that. So essentially, as Town of Edson, you have two library boards. Your municipal board, and you're part of the Yellowhead Regional Library Board. So going up to the top part, in terms of funding for Yellowhead, each municipality is paying currently $4.30 per capita to the system services. That rate has been in effect since 2009, and we've maintained that rate for a number of reasons which I won't go into, but have been able to maintain that rate. The board at its meeting on, I believe it was June 11th, looked at, we talked about budget direction for next year in June. And we are at a point where financially, Yellowhead is, we're working on a very, I won't say a lean budget, and our expected surplus in 2018 is around $30,000. So given that, plus the fact that provincial funding has now, I will say for the first year, flatlined. Every year for the past number of years, the province has recognized current populations for libraries, both municipal and regional. In the funding that's provided from the province this year, they're only recognizing it's been frozen at 2016 population. So in terms of each municipality, it may have a positive or negative effect. If your municipality's increased in population, then it won't be recognized in the provincial grants. It's the same for the Yellowhead Board. We are about 6,000 population greater than 2016. However, we're only going to get grants on 2016 population. So given this little indication of a little bit of freeze in the population, the board has directed administration to consider that starting in potentially 2020, a small inflationary increase. So that will be discussed more through 2019, and councils will be informed well beforehand of any changes to the rate. Now, if the rate changes, there's two methods for it. If there's an inflationary increase that's no greater than the CPI from the previous year, the Yellowhead Board itself can pass that rate increase. However, if that rate increase is greater than the previous year's CPI, it would come back to each council to say, do you support that rate increase or not? That's the money part out of the way. So, you, as part of Regional Library System, you appoint a trustee. Councillor Beyer is your representative right now on the board, and you, the trustees, have a governance role in Yellowhead Regional Library. That's it. What I'm going to say about membership and governance, unless there's some other questions on that. The second page talks about collaboration and connection. So the role of the Regional Library System not only is to provide services, but is also there to connect all of our member libraries to the wider provincial network of public libraries. So this is where we get into some acronyms going down. But first on here is Alberta Municipal Affairs Public Library Services Branch. This is the branch of municipal affairs that oversees public library service, the legislation, the grants, and so on. And under the bullets there, you can see that as a regional library system, we receive a provincial operating grant for $4.70 per capita from the province. As your municipal library also receives a municipal operating grant, which is currently at $5.55 per capita. The PLSB, that's their acronym, coordinates resource sharing between libraries in the province and provides some access to a few electronic resources, access to what's called the Me Libraries. This is a program where if you have a library card from Edson here, a track card, you can go online and choose to join all other public libraries in the province. You go to this website, you put your barcode in, you verify that you're a track patron, and then you can just click off boxes. I want to join Edmonton, I want to join St. Albert, whichever library or another library system. And that will allow you then to take that card into those libraries and borrow materials there. That's a provincial program. Also, we are supported libraries very strongly by the Public Library Services branch in terms of the SuperNet. The branch pays for the SuperNet connection for all public libraries and regional library systems. So currently, for the Edson Public Library, there's a SuperNet connection fee of almost $900 per month, and that's picked up by the province. Now, I know the SuperNet's been in the news recently, so over the next few days, we might find out what's happening with it. And I only hope it's good things, because if the SuperNet becomes, I won't say unavailable, but if there's a transition and it doesn't go smoothly, it's going to affect operations for a lot of people, including libraries. In terms of your contribution to Yellowhead Regional Library, I have to go back to this page here. Your membership fee in 2018 was just over $36,000. So as I'm speaking about the services, they are all covered in that amount. There are no additional fees charged to the member libraries or charged back to you as council. The next section on this page here is the Regional Automation Consortium, TRAC. This is a consortium of 4 regional library systems: Yellowhead, Northern Lights, Peace Library System, and Marigold Library System. The consortium has been created to provide cost-effective services to the members of all 4 of those regional library systems. So essentially, TRAC has the library software and the servers that all of the member libraries in those 4 regions operate off of. Also, it's the web catalog you go to as a patron. And TRAC also shares some resources. So by combining into a bigger entity, we're able to save money on this integrated library system. TRAC provides people in Edson with access to over 3.3 million items. And when you go online and you say, okay, I want this book, I want this DVD, whatever, and you say, place a hold, it is going to come from any of those 180 libraries that are involved through 4 regions in TRAC. Your library card is also good in those 180 libraries. You can walk in and you'll be treated as if you were a local resident. That's enough for TRAC right there. In terms of resource sharing in the province, Yellowhead Regional Library members share about 400,000 items a year between each other and within TRAC. Your own public library has lent out this is 2017, over 24,000 items to other libraries and borrowed 18,000 borrowed 18,000 items from other libraries within TRAC. We also, through the regional system headquarters, can provide your residents access to academic, college, and technical libraries. And this is through an organization called the Alberta Library, TAL. So Yellowhead is a member of the Alberta Library, and it means that then the residents of all our member libraries have access to the Alberta Library services. Alberta Library has their own library catalog called TAL Online. So you can see what's in Edson or whatever there, but you go to TRACPAC, the TRAC website first. But if you can't find something in TRACPAC, a resident can, they can go to the TAL Online, and then they can, if they find the item, they can place a request there. So that item could be coming from U of A, Grant MacEwan, NAIT, or something like that. TAL also provides some other services that your library takes advantage of. One of them is the Alberta Library does collaborative buying for a lot of electronic resources. So it brings the cost down for many of us. So that's a lot of the role of a regional library system. We're making a connection to the bigger picture in the province. Now, bibliographic services. This is one of, we say, the traditional library services. And I won't use an acronym for bibliographic services because it's well, a little rude. But essentially what these services are is that we'll order materials and catalog materials, and when we say catalog, that means putting them in the database and process them, put spine labels and things like that on, so that when they arrive at your local library, your library can put those materials out on the shelf right away. And their staff don't have to do those backroom functions. Part of the BIB services is that each member library is provided a small budget for acquiring materials over and above what you as a council provide money to your own library. So although the paper here says 50 cents per capita, that changed in 2018, and that materials budget is now 75 cents per capita, so a little over $6,300 is coming from the headquarters to Edson Public Library for Helen and her staff to choose materials for your library. The advantage of providing these services is that because we are ordering on behalf of 55 libraries, we will get better discounts than an individual library will receive on their own. So we pass that on to the member library. We'll take care of any shipping and so on. Bibliographic services. And zipping right along. We're into, there's delivery and interlibrary loan on the next page. Your library receives 1 delivery per week from the Yellowhead vans. What we do to try to make life easy, if you remember, I said your staff loans out 25,000 items a year. We don't require them to sort those items and say this one is going to say Hinton and this one's going to Spruce Grove or that. Staff just throw them all in one big bin, well, several big bins, it's not just one. We take them back to headquarters and our staff then sorts those materials, directs them to wherever they're going. So again, costs time savings for your staff. We also have a service where we repair discs, DVDs, CDs, Blu-ray and that. So it helps the libraries extend the life of their materials, and they don't have to spend as much money replacing DVDs. And somebody asked the other day, do people still use DVDs? And yes, they do. And CDs, not as much, but DVDs is popular. Client services is the department that provides a lot of support services for the staff and the library directors and the member libraries. So we have librarians who act as consultants, and they will assist the member libraries in doing things such as collection development, inventories. We can assist a library when they're doing what's required by the province, a needs assessment and a plan of service. And we will provide them advice and suggestions on planning, programming, and library operations. So we're there to support all the staff and that. We do a lot of training and professional development for the library staff. So big area of training is the Polaris library system. That's the software that the staff are using within the library. We also train staff on all of the electronic resources, which I'll speak about in a few seconds. And so when they want to know when patrons come in asking, how do we use this? Well, we're helping staff know how to use these resources ahead of time so they can help the patrons. We do a lot of training in person. We have workshops at our headquarters, but we do a lot of online training too with webinars and that. So it makes it convenient for staff. Anytime we do training with a webinar, it's available on our website so that a staff member who couldn't attend the actual live webinar can go back and watch a recorded version of it when it suits them and their work day. We also have an annual conference coming up in early September, and we bring in outside speakers to provide information on a variety of topics for the member libraries. And trustees too, that we get a number of trustees attending also. In client services, we also provide network and desktop services. So your library, Edson, is on the Yellowhead network, which is part of the SuperNet. And we provide for the staff Microsoft software licensing for the staff computers. We provide the internet bandwidth that's used in your library and the Wi-Fi device that patrons are connecting and using the bandwidth with. And just to give you an idea, in 2017, there was over 31,000 connections made by your patrons to the Wi-Fi device in your library. So, very active. We also provide network security, keep those staff computers and all the operations secure. And we provide the website that your library has. So if you go to Edson's website, that template is provided by Yellowhead headquarters. That we support the libraries with that website and train them on it, or we'll do updates to the website if they so choose that the headquarters staff do that. And just to give you an idea, your website is used quite actively. In 2017, there was over 11,000 sessions on your website. That's people going in. Now, it could be the same person going in a number of times, but 11,000 sessions looking at 24,000 different pages on your website. So people in the community are going there to get library information or to find out what's going on or to access the electronic services, which I will get into now that we've moved to the collections part. So through Yellowhead Regional Library, we provide 24 different electronic resources that your patrons, well, your residents, can access if they have a library card. And I won't go through all 24 because I don't think I could name all 24 of them. But if you go to your library's website and go under e-resources, you'll see all 24 there. But they're essentially in 3 different categories. There's downloadable and streaming content. Those are the most popular ones. But there's research and reference ones, so traditional databases for articles that people may be using for study or general interest. And there's learning platforms. So an example of learning platform would be lynda.com. You've probably seen their ads on TV. Well, a local resident doesn't have to subscribe and pay a monthly fee to lynda.com because they can get access to that through with their library card through a membership here. Consumer Reports is available also through the library. The most popular, as I said, were the downloadable and streaming content. And so this is electronic books, electronic audio books, magazines, movies, television shows, music, and these are across a number of services. So one of the electronic book services is called Overdrive. And in 2017, Edson residents downloaded over 7,500 electronic books from Overdrive. I love these names. Hoopla is the streaming service for movies, music, television shows, there's comic books, and so on there. There was almost 3,500 downloads of content from Hoopla made by people in Edson. This particular service is different than some of them, is that every time a person downloads an item, there's a cost that's charged to the regional library system. So in 2017, that was almost $7,800 worth of content downloaded by residents in Edson. And then the magazine service, there's about 140 magazines roughly in that electronic service, and almost 800 magazines were downloaded by Edson residents in 2017. In collections, we have collections that support the libraries. These are the programming kits, so there are early literacy kits, storytime kits. These are programs in a box that the library can borrow and run these programs for members of the community. On the last page, we also have some special collection kits, and these are for information on First Nations and materials written or produced, because there are DVDs and CDs in there by First Nations performers and authors. We have world language kits. If there are people in your community that are looking for, there are 6 different languages that would like to read materials in their mother tongue. They're available. We have some Alberta collections of Alberta books, and not on the slide there, but last year we created 6 what are called makerspace kits, and that's a big movement in public libraries now where patrons come in and they have the ability to learn and do things hands-on in the library. So as an example, we have a recording makerspace kit, so people can play around with recording software. There's a makerspace kit that has robotics and coding involved, so the materials are there for the patrons to come in and use those materials to discover. But they're not all technology. There's a button maker kit, and that's essentially for making, buttons for whatever you want to put on them. Although I have to admit, when the kits were being designed and I was told there was a button maker kit, I looked down at my shirt and I thought, well, why would anybody want to make buttons? Then a twig. So, but there's also a kit that allows them to do crafts and so on. So this is a way of the libraries to say, we can bring a program in, without having to pay all of the money for the resources that need to support this program. That is the whirlwind tour of Yellowhead Regional Library.
Well, thanks, Kevin. Excellent presentation, as always. You've been here before and that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is the sequel from last
Yeah,
April.
it's always been enlightening. It's glad to hear from our library board. I'll open the floor up to questions. Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Kevin, for your actual presentations. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
By all means.
How does our library compare to the other 55? Like, how well is our library used? Where do we stack up?
You know, I have not done a library by library comparison, but for a library that's almost 10,000 population, you are very active.
So in
Well, see, the ones that would be comparable in population-wise, if you take Barhead Library, although Barhead is only about 5,000 population,
Right.
they're a joint board between Barhead County and Barhead Town. Hinton, similar, although I haven't done this presentation on Hinton, so I'd have to go back and look at the statistics. But, you know, I know the activity at Spruce Grove, and that's our largest library. It serves 35,000 residents. So if I were to take their statistics and compare yours, you have an active community. You know, the times I've been in Edson Public Library, there's a lot of people there, and a lot of activity going on. And that's the one interesting sort of change over the last 10 years. Libraries have gone away from the traditional, we have books, they always will, I think, at least in my lifetime and maybe all of our lifetime here. More audiovisual materials, and now it's the virtual presence. So you could have library members that essentially have walked into the library, gotten a library card, and if they're not borrowing physical materials, they aren't necessarily a body in the library, but they can be an active library user through all of those electronic resources. And I think that's bringing in a lot of younger people to the libraries all across Alberta now, is because of the virtual services that are available. You know, we know that many young people are attached to their screens, and your public library is available to them through their device.
Councillor Sorensen, Councillor Byron?
Yes, great. Thank you very much for the presentation. Along the same lines, my question is, can people download ebooks and magazines and stream content from home, or do they have to go to the library?
They can do it from home. Of course, they're using their data package for that. One of the challenges, maybe not in Edson, because you are, I'm not going to say you're rural, but you're also semi-urban, you're large. But for residents who live out in very remote areas, they may not have a sufficient internet service to provide that. But it's, yeah, you can use them anywhere. You can be on holidays in Hawaii. As long as you can connect to the internet, you can use those resources there.
Councillor Byron?
Through the chair to, I just wanted to, I don't have any questions, thank you, Kevin. Just to address Councillor Schnurr's question about the library usage. Since I'm on the board, Edson Library has in-person visits, and we have an electronic recorder across the door. And we get over 100,000 visits per year, which is right online comparing to the tourism libraries of Drumheller and Banff. So.
There you go. So, I mean, when you think about that, your population is 8,500 roughly. If it were just local residents, well, my math isn't the strongest, but how many times have they gone to the library, each one of them, if you did that kind of calculation? So thank you. So those are the kind of statistics I may not see at the regional headquarters. I just see what we can, you know, some of the ones I told you about overall usage and that. Yeah.
Councillor Schnurr?
The other question is, I know where we touched on funding, and I know when the minister was here, we asked the direct question. So in a lot of times, I guess that's where you involve council if the province is threatening the funding cuts. They've tried it in other provinces over the years, and that's where I stress like the use of libraries, the importance of keeping the funding up from the province. I mean, a freeze don't hurt us, but if they do cuts, that
Well,
could severely
I would
hurt us.
have to say I've been around a long time, 29 years at Yellowhead, and there's never been cuts to the operating grants from the province. There have been periods of time where the funding levels have been frozen for 3, maybe 4 years, and then recognition of current population happens. So not experienced a cut like was proposed in Saskatchewan a year ago. The thing to always remember with the province, they support, when we talk about interlibrary loan, the Yellowhead bands are moving materials between our members quite a bit. But those materials going out to our tract partners, we're not delivering to them. We're using a provincial government courier. So right now, the province is supporting public library usage of the provincial government courier to about the tune of $750,000. Plus, I mentioned that SuperNet fee. I do believe the total budget for SuperNet costs for the Public Library Services branch is over $2 million. So, you know, if you're talking to the minister, it's always, you know, you can talk about library operating grants, and yes, they've been frozen, but they certainly do support libraries beyond the grants now, too. Without, I mean, I don't know how many of the Yellowhead member libraries would be able to afford, it's either $500 and some dollars or $898 a month for that SuperNet connection. That would be quite a burden on the member libraries, and the system's headquarters wouldn't be able to pay for those costs without a huge rate increase to the members. So we are very lucky that our province is supporting us that way too. But something to keep in mind. I mean, yes, libraries are important to communities, and it's something that you know, the government and I'm sure council, you hear often too. They are quite important to communities.
I guess I just have a question for you is, when the books go out and stuff like that, do you guys have a lot of write-off that they don't come back in that? Does it cost you a lot for the libraries at all?
You know,
Replacement?
probably I'm going to turn to Helen because she would know, we don't have much for physical collections at headquarters, so we don't see that.
Okay.
So our loss is probably 5 to 10% a year, but our community is very good to us, and they provide us with lots and lots of almost brand new books that we can choose from. We either choose from it and put it in the collection, or we sell it and use the money to buy new books. So I feel like the community pushes back or gives back as much as we lose.
Generally, I would say that whatever loss there is mostly because of wear and tear on materials. And you may have borrowed books, and sometimes you'll get from a library book that's almost falling apart. And you know, they have a finite lifespan. So it's like a commercial business. It's materials will be damaged, sometimes in shipping, sometimes by a patron. It's part of the cost of doing business, but I don't think it's a significant issue that we've heard at headquarters from the member libraries, that every time we send a book out, it's coming back broken, and we're not happy about that.
And could I add that in May we had 8,000 unique visits, like unique visits by person. So it might not be a different person, but it's 8,000 visits.
So when you're saying on the visits here now, you got electronic recorder, is that coming into the library itself, or is it coming into where the public
You
would
break the
walk in?
beam going in and going out, so you have the statistics for, and then you take the percentage off for staff and everything.
And that'd be the same if somebody was using a library, came out, used a washroom, and come back in again. You would record
Yeah,
them
but
again,
you-
sort of
you-
deal.
You calculate for that and take
Okay.
it out. And also you have to have it because they're coming in and going out.
Right.
It's a closed space.
Great, thank you. Is there any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you
Pleasure to
very
see you
much.
here again and that, and I hear you are moving on.
I am retiring at the end of the year, so I guess there won't be a trilogy of Kevin visiting Edson, but it has been a pleasure. I'm not gone yet till the end of the year, but Edson and the West here have, I mean, I'm just impressed by it, because you are among the newest members of Yellowhead, coming in 1998. And library service out here is great. Library people, councils, you've been great over the years, so I appreciate that and all the support. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, you'll be missed. And you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like, but
I'm starting holidays tomorrow, so I need to get back to the office and wrap things up, but thank you again.
yeah, understandable, so. Okay, moving on, we have another delegation, Edson District Boys and Girls Club, please. Come on up to the table.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us here. The main purpose for this visit is really to say thank you to the, yes?
Before you go to, I'll just get you introduce your
Oh,
group here,
sure.
please.
Yeah, so we have Corey Hollaby, he's our board member. He's also the Director of Transportation for GYPSZ. And we have Sarah Ireland, who is our Program Director. And we have the four most important people of the club. Nathan and
No, Nathaniel.
Nathaniel.
That's Nathaniel.
Well, thank you very much. You can mention.
Briella, Caitlin, Alexa.
Yes.
Thank you
And
very much.
myself.
And I'll get council to introduce themselves, please.
Councillor Jean Chenard.
Jackie Curry.
Troy Sorensen.
Crystal Meyer.
Mayor Kevin Zahara.
Janet Wilkinson, and thank you for coming, kids. Thank you.
And Trevor Bevan. Go ahead, Alta.
So instead of doing an oral presentation, we decided to give you guys a treat. We actually made a video that captures some of the things that we've done at the club. So we'll show you the video and then you can ask us a few questions. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, you guys can sit down if you want, yeah, for sure.
It's awesome.
This is way more fun than the presentation.
I know, I did it the other day, but I need to turn off the TV and turn it on again. I tested it yesterday.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. This is well good.
Get you to say a few words?
Oh, no. Well, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but the Boys and Girls Club has been in Eston for 33 years. And that's a long time. That's a major part of Edson. And recently, for the first time, our club we had a peer review, meaning a team from the national headquarters in Toronto came down here to take a look at our operation to see how we are doing nationwide. And we actually did very well. So we need to do some improvements, but overall, we have done great in comparison to other clubs. And not sure if you know this, but the Boys and Girls Club originated from Canada and actually in Nova Scotia. It started, I think, just in the beginning of 1900s. At that time, it wasn't named the Boys and Girls Club; it was a different name. But then it evolved and eventually became the Boys and Girls Club. So for us here at the Eston Club, there are two new initiatives we're working on that's going to really take us to another level. One is we're working towards accreditation, meaning that we'll be able to apply for additional grants. Second, we've been approached by the government to either open a pre-K program or a daycare. So we're right now in conversation with the licensing officer to see what would best fit the town of Edson. Because we have the space and the area to provide these services. And one of the things I've been seeing is we have some talented staff at the club. So the question is, how do we retain them? Because they only work from 3 in the afternoon to around 6. So with either a preschool program or a daycare service, we can extend hours for these qualified staff. So those are two things we're kind of looking at right now. Accreditation, we almost, I would say, 80% done. We have one more standard left to complete, and then we'll have a site visit. So the site visit is probably going to be at the end of July. So I don't like to talk, so.
Almost there.
Almost there.
You're doing well.
All right. There are two initiatives that we started about a couple of years ago. One was a cooking program and a homework and reading program. It's interesting because the homework program really allowed the children to do their homework at the club. So when they go home, they spend time with the parents. So we complemented that with a cooking program. And thanks to Troy, you had given us a donation to help with the cooking program through Centenary Club, right? So what we did was the children will learn how to cook, and the meal they prepare, they take it home to the parents. So that evening, the children and the parents sit down together and have a meal. So with the homework completed, a meal prepared, it's a wonderful evening. So it's interesting because there's a lot of benefits behind that you really don't see. One of it is one parent came to us and said, you know, by preparing a meal, I'm able to take my children to a Tuesday night matinee. So there's some added benefits to the cooking program. In addition to that, like last year we had 3 summer students that now are in college. What we found out was they don't even know how to prepare a meal. So what we're starting to do right now is preparing the children. This year, we just got another grant from Shell. So we're gonna take the cooking program to a different level, meaning we're gonna take fewer children into the kitchen, and they're gonna prepare the meal from scratch to end. Both boys and girls are learning how to cook. So it's a very important life skill for them. So you wanna talk about the meal you made? You know what I mean? Come on, tell them. Please.
Come on, kids. Show your best self. Tell us about your meal, come on.
Caitlin, I asked her, she was actually the first kid that actually started a meal from the beginning to end. So I asked her, what would you like to prepare? So she said, lasagna. So I said, all right, what ingredients do you like in your lasagna? And she wrote down every single ingredients that she needed. She said that the only thing is my mom doesn't like cheese in the lasagna. But it's my meal, so I'm gonna prepare it. And she did great. Did you enjoy it? She did. She actually did really well in preparing this meal. I was actually surprised how well she did. So, yes. She also. Oh, thank you very much. Laura was there also.
No, Alexa.
Alexa, sorry. I get mixed up with names. There's so many names. Alexa was there also, who helped cook. Did you take any meal home that day? Or was it just her?
No, she took some.
She took some? Okay. So, so this is what we want to, I guess, give the kids some memories and experience that when they leave the club, they take away memories. And interestingly, I was going to tell you at the end of this video, with, is it ready?
Just about.
Oh. When we were thinking of doing this video, I was thinking that we were going to pay a lot to get it done. So we had someone came into the office and we discussed it. And at the end she said, you know, she said, I'm not going to charge you guys anything for this video. I said, why? She said, well, I talked it over with my husband, and he mentioned that he really benefited from the Boys and Girls Club when he was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And it really helped him in regards to who he is today. And that's why they're not going to charge us for this video. So that's really impressive. And when I heard this story, I said to myself, this is what we need to give kids at our club. This kind of memory, so that when they leave the club, they take with them some good skills.
We have the second generation of our family going to the Boys and Girls.
Look at that. Yeah? Isn't that impressive?
Okay, should be good to go.
Okay.
It's the other one.
The others.
Yes,
Excellent.
it's a short one.
This one
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
you think of the firefighters and the RCM coming out to play?
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So do you think it's important that we have lots of events like this in the community?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name's Tyler Robinson. I'm the fire chief with the Town Edson Fire Department and participate in the youth interagency programs, and this is one of them, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
Awesome. Thanks for coming out. Why
It's-
do you think it's important to have events like this for youth in the community?
You know, for one, it's just fun to play with kids. To have the RCMP and the police and the fire departments from both Edson and Yellowhead County come out, I think it's just really important to be out in the public and do the public relations with all the kids.
Mm-hmm. So you're glad to have the opportunity to be a role model for the youth in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it can be humbling sometimes for sure to have little kids look up to you the way they do sometimes, but I think it's very important for us to maintain that and participate anytime we can with our kids.
I'm Colton Armstrong. I'm with Yellowhead County Fire Department.
And why do you think it's important to come out and support events like this in the community and get youth involved?
To try and be a positive role model for the youth and show them what other options they have when they grow up.
So do you think it's pretty cool that the RCMP and the fire department came out today to play with you guys?
Yep.
Yeah? You having a lot of fun?
I'm Constable Sarah Penoyer with the Edson RCMP detachment here.
And why do you think it's important that we have events like this for the youth in the community?
I think it's really good to have events like this with some of us adults. They might not see us outside of emergency calls, so it's nice for them to see us on a different basis and kind of build those relationships and some rapport with them as kind of the adults that can help them with things in our community.
I'm Stacy McGinn.
And what organization are you with?
I'm with Yellowhead Public School Division, West Haven School.
Awesome. And why do you think it's important to have activities like this for the youth in the community to come out and participate?
I think it's important for the youth to know that we care about what they're doing and we want to enjoy physical activity with them and have a good time in our community. So showing them that baseball games or soccer games or anything like that we can enjoy with the children and show them how much we care.
the volunteers, without whom something like this does not happen. So a huge salute to the volunteers.
Sorry it was a long video, but we wanted to show you guys,
Sounds. It would have been much longer.
yes, you're right.
Short version.
That's a short version. Yes, and this video is really to thank the town of Edson for, and of course FCSS, for all its support to the Boys and Girls Club. You want me to start? I don't want to start.
Can't see you back there all day.
So like I said, it was just our way of saying thank you. We've been here for 33 years, and it's time we give you guys, you know, I guess credit for what you have helped the club done. And you know, one quick thing about the National Youth Week. When we decided that we were going to do this event, a week-long event, we never knew where the funds were going to come from. But we took a huge risk, and we said, you know, we're going to do this. And the funds started coming in as we start to announce it. Real Radio did an awesome thing for us. They were actually live on site. And the cost would have been about, I think, $8,000. And they found a sponsor from Grand Prairie to cover that expense. So they came on site and they went live. And they really did a good job in promoting the event. And even the newspapers, they really did a wonderful job in promoting the event. So, anyways, questions, and the kids will answer them.
Is there any questions? Councilor Sorensen.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you were approached by someone to start the preschool and daycare.
Yes.
Who approached you?
Well, it's the licensing officer. Because I was explaining to her that we don't do much at the club. And also the peer reviewers who came from Toronto, from the national office, they actually recommended it. Because they said you have a facility there that's not, it's actually underutilized. And if you want to retain employees, good employees, you need to give them extra hours.
Anybody else? Councilor Byer?
Through the chair. So do you know what your usage would be for county residents and Edson residents of the kids that utilize the clubs?
It's a service about what 40% county.
Yeah, I'd say the majority would be the town. I'd probably say it would be a 60-40 split in favor of the town. And it depends on which group of kids we have at certain times, and sometimes that number fluctuates.
Go ahead.
And another question regarding Councilor Sorensen's comment about the possibility of the daycare. Do you know if you'd be eligible or able to apply for that $25 a day program that the government is?
It's more likely, but I think only one group can have access to that in a certain time. And I think the existing already has that. Yeah.
Councilor Curry?
Through Chair, my question's to the kids. What's your favorite part about the club?
My favorite part of the club is that you can play basketball in the gym and outside.
I like baking club, where you bake stuff.
And cook lasagna.
We need to know when baking club is so we can come.
What do you like?
I like to do everything. I like to do homework in the quiet room.
It's really interesting about the homework room because it's very quiet. And the kids really excel in that homework. You want to share that story with that kid who wanted to beat a record? He has a record right now of reading.
Yes, there's one child who would come in the homework room each day after school and he would just read. And so when I was talking to him about reading, he said that he wanted to beat his record each day and read longer and longer each day. So he said he had a record of an hour and a half, and so he wanted to come the next day and read even longer than that. So that was a goal he set for himself, which we thought was awesome, and so we wanted to help support him through that.
Go ahead, Corey.
I'll say something here. I'm new to the community, Edson, and actually I recognize a few faces here around the table. I came from Edmonton, and I actually volunteered for the Big Brothers Big Sisters Club. So when I came to Edmonton, I was actually amazed how well this club was being run, and just the numerous classes that are being offered, such as the baking, the cooking, the reading. The National Youth Group was a huge success, so I mean, just a great job to Altaf, the community as well. I mean, without the support from you guys, there would be limited activities for the children here, so I just want to give a huge shout out to you guys.
And your books come from where when the kids are going to read?
The public library.
Yeah.
Well, some of them.
Yes.
Some of them they bought.
You're right. We bought some. She knows.
You're going to keep you honest, Altaf.
They do actually. They notice things.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
I think we have a counselor in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And one last thing is, for the club, we rely heavily on donations and of course support from the town. So we will actually encourage you when you're going to give us again to think of the increase of wages that we're going to face in October. I'm not going to ask you how much you should give us, but consider us because we can do great and we can do better. So thank you for your time. If there's no more other questions, we'll depart.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the kids that are coming out.
Entertain us
Go
one
ahead.
more thing. I would like to take a picture of the kids with you guys, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. You guys go around that table. Come on. Go next.
Oh, she knows where she's going.
Of all places.
Of all places.
Oh, not a teacher.
You want to just have a group picture back here?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, let's have a group picture back here.
Put you in the front so we can. Okay, in front of Finally,
Do you mind taking
taller
it?
than
And I'll give it to Caitlin.
Sure. Come on, Sonny. You're a good help to us. Come on.
He
I
has a
take
new name?
pictures.
What's his name?
Oh, I can take sure. No, please. I need it. Come on, please. Jealous. Come on, jealous.
Does Robbie want to see you from? Come on over there. Steve, why don't you ask Sherry to come and see me?
Okay. Oh, I was just moving this out of the way.
I'll try to get the first week in this.
Okay.
Look at her.
I'm good. When they're ready. Because I want you to put my
Oh, I rarely the cameras.
Okay.
My turn.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I choose the best ones. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, very nice presentation. Okay, moving on then. Department reports. Community Service Department, report please. Sorry, Tanya.
That's okay. Good morning. It's a bit of a tough act to follow. But it was also nice to be here because, you know, our department is really heavily involved with the Boys and Girls Club as well. And it's, they really speak to the inclusive and diverse programming that we all kind of strive towards. So that was really nice that they were here. So I'm going to talk a lot about, not a lot, but I'm going to talk more about the big picture with our community development group and where we're headed. And, you know, I think in the Explore Edson brochure that you guys have all seen, you know, that talks a lot about the individual programs and such that we deliver and the special events and whatnot. And I think you're fairly up to speed on that. But if you have any questions about particulars, I can talk about that too. You know, we're really excited right now to be fully staffed in the community development department. I guess we're not really department, but part of the community services group. And so we've recently hired Diana Insco, and she just started, and she's going to be taking on more of the arts and culture and special events that Ali Broda used to be covering. So that is going to be her area. Ali has moved into the FCSS portfolio, and we also have Scott Land that's joined us to cover Krista's mat leave, and he's doing recreation. So even though these community development coordinators all sort of have their own area of expertise, we all work very much together. All of the work we do, I guess, it moves towards the same, or goes in the same direction, and we really, you know, when we do special events and such, they check many of the boxes. And, you know, in discussion with Mike the other day, we were talking about, you know, how Eddie's Big Run, for example, you know, it checks the box of recreation. It checks the box of getting families out and getting active together and just having a really good experience. And it also brings community together. So, you know, when you look at a lot of the events we do, even, you know, with our art in the park and that sort of thing, community togetherness, engaging everyone, hoping they build relationships and get out, get away from their electronics and, you know, do some really good, meaningful things together. Next, our team, we're going to continue providing really diverse social, cultural, and recreational opportunities and experiences for all ages. And we really see those as the vehicles to helping residents engage and connect with one another in our community. Over the past 2 years, I've been here a little bit longer than that now, but we've been attending learning events and networking meetings that center around the Abundant Communities model, and I think that you guys have heard me talk a lot about that too. I was really lucky to go to an event. It was a week-long event put on by the Tamarack Institute, and it really just brought home the need for grassroots and building community from the bottom up. And so we've really been following a lot of that work and learning from other communities like St. Albert, who are further along that continuum than we are, but that's the direction we're headed in. We really learned that community capital, it's not just the existence of groups. We know that it takes engaged, deliberate, hard work to bring people together. And some of these associations already exist that you're aware of. I mean, you think of minor sports, minor soccer, Chautauqua, church groups, you know, they all provide their members with a sense of belonging. But when we really look at the big picture, who is doing that at the neighborhood level, right? So that's great if you're involved in a church or if you're involved in hockey or whatnot, and you find that sense of belonging there. But what about the people that don't have that don't feel that they're connected to any specific group? So again, when looking at the Abundant Communities model, we want to really create resilient neighborhoods, and that's going to happen with initiatives like the Block Party. And even though it looks like it's just throwing a party, there's a lot of research behind why we do them and the importance of them. Like a block party, it's getting to know your neighbors, and then you start supporting one another. You realize that the senior next to you might need some help with shoveling, but in turn, maybe she can provide babysitting for the single mom that's trying to make ends meet. So it's about creating those connections, and in turn, they create that sense of belonging in their own communities, and they feel more connected, less isolated. You know, it really helps with mental health, with physical health, and there's so much research about isolation and that sense of belonging. And so we're really, you know, moving towards that. I think one example I'm going to use just about building community from a grassroots perspective. When I look at the Edson Cycling Association and what they've done and how that started, I mean, that's a grassroots group of volunteers, engaged people who said, you know what, this is something that we want to do. It wasn't driven by the town. It wasn't driven by anyone other than really engaged participants and volunteers that wanted to make a difference in their community. And you know, you look how their well-laid plans and their hard work have now led into getting community on board, getting corporations on board with providing maybe some of the means to get the job done. And now the municipalities have also gotten involved in that with financial help. But because of this grassroots hardworking group, you know, we now have this, or we're going to have this really amazing structure, and we're going to have these opportunities for community family members, people to come from other communities to come and really enjoy what Edson has to offer in a beautiful park setting. So I just wanted to use that as saying, you know, because of that grassroots community group, we now are really building community. So I'd already said we've been talking about, you know, St. Albert is one of the leaders in a community and social development, and the learning is really helping us. It developed our local mission and vision and value statements, which align with the town's strategic priority, creating a vibrant and healthy community. We also know that to create long-term change, we need to understand the social networks in our area, learn which individuals and groups are prone to isolation, and identify local community champions that are going to help us create those solutions. A lot of what our group does, our team, is providing free and low-cost events like Rotary in the Park, or Art in the Park, sorry, Eddie's Big Run. You know, we like to create opportunities for all residents to participate in community life, and hopefully new relationships are going to blossom as a result of that. Boosting volunteerism is another thing we feel is really important. So Ally is looking at doing a volunteer fair in the schools in the fall, just to help youth understand what is out there, how they can get involved, because we really need to build that next generation of engaged community members and volunteers. I think just a couple notes on things that are happening right now in FCSS that you guys should be aware of. the Regional Elder Abuse Prevention Coordinator, which is Charlene Sitar is the incumbent right now. The provincial funding for that position only went for 3 years, and at the end of this fiscal year in December, that position is no longer being funded by the province. I've already met with Councillor Wilkinson about that, and also with Jim Desitels, and we have created a letter that we're going to be putting forth to the minister to say how needed that resource is in our community. But I just wanted to let you know about that, and seeing if you would consider doing the same, because I think the more letters and information going forward will hopefully help keep that position in our region. We just, even though we do have an FCSS worker now, which we're really excited to have, they cover the whole gamut, right, from 0 to 6 and all the way up to seniors. And so we really don't have the capacity to do the things that the regional coordinator does do for us. And so, just want to let you know that support would be really welcome. The transportation grant is another thing that's on our plate right now. And those of you have probably seen too, with the MARD grant that we received, which was $10,000 for our region, to talk about a plan to start getting people, medically at-risk drivers, to the city or Barhead or wherever their appointments may be. We're just kind of getting started with the planning on that. But locally, the Town of Edson transportation grant is $25,000 is how much we have overall that we split up, and we've had 3 associations right now, or organizations, that have applied for that funding. What we're going to be doing is hopefully meeting soon with them to say, how can you help support the MARD initiative, and how are we going to get these people out of town to their appointments and whatnot, because that seems to be one of the largest risk areas that we have right now. So that's also happening. The Scout Shack, I'm not going to give too much away on that, but right now Ali has been working with a group, the Make Your Mark group, and they're actually going to start they're going to start painting a mural on that Scout Shack right now. So that's kind of exciting, but as for programming and revamping the inside of it and stuff, we're still kind of working out the kinks on that. So obviously it's event season right now. Things are getting busy. Canada Day, Art in the Park, youth interagency summer programs, and we're transitioning. Everybody's new in their positions right now, so we're really excited, to have a full team to move forward with some of these initiatives that we've been really excited to get going. So if anyone has any questions, that's it for my presentation.
Mayor Zahara and Councillor Curry.
Yes, through the chair, thank you very much for your presentation, Tanya, and exciting times, a lot of change happening within the department. And remember when I first moved to the community, there wasn't a lot going on, and that sure has changed, and you hear it from other communities that they talk about all the events and all the activities Edson is doing, so hats off to your group. I do have a question when it comes to volunteerism. We hear this a lot when we're talking with nonprofit groups that they're really struggling. Is there any strategies that FCSS and the community development department's going to be looking at in order to address that? I know you mentioned the fair, maybe a database of volunteers or anything like that.
Yeah, we've certainly been looking, and even just kind of polling other communities to see how they do it. Right now we haven't decided moving forward how we're going to do that, but yeah, we're certainly thinking about a database. Some communities have where basically if you're an agency that's looking for volunteers, you post it on a website and say, I'm looking for 2 volunteers to serve popcorn at the park, and then a volunteer from that database would check them, be like, yep, click, I can do that, right? And so these would be pre-approved volunteers that have criminal record checks done and that sort of thing. So we've kind of dotted the I's and crossed the T's. So I mean that's definitely a model that I would like to see move forward. But I believe that Ali is going to be the person that's going to be really researching and digging into that. But definitely stay tuned because it's a priority for Edson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Curry and Councillor Schnard.
Through the chair, thank you, Tanya. Just a question about with the new way that it's been organized, how is that FCS role still filling that position with the increase in budget we gave it for the purpose of the outreach worker? So how are we ensuring that that's still happening in that method?
Okay, so again, Ali is going to be, sorry, through the chair, Ally will be the person that is in charge of the FCSS portfolio. And definitely part of what we were missing before was having someone available to actually do some outreach work. And that doesn't, I mean, it doesn't mean we're gonna be doing crisis work, but it's that person that can help point people in the right direction, help them find the resources they need. But also, you know, with 211, for example, with the elder abuse protocol, they can call 211 and in turn, they connect that elderly person that's having trouble with our FCSS outreach worker. Well, she's not called an outreach worker, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's obviously a priority that we need to take care of our individuals as well as the larger community, right? But we also hope that by building these community initiatives, that some of those things are going to take care of themselves. And so, you know, we're focusing kind of at the bigger picture right now, but we definitely have more capacity now to help individuals, which is exciting.
Thank you.
Councillor Schneider?
Okay, actually just 2 points. I know like where you're saying the involvement, like Arts in the Park now, like where we're running short on volunteers. What we did started utilizing the park staff. And then the other one I can compliment you on is, over the years, is like the Family Day weekend. Years ago, there was nothing. I had a person complain, oh my God, there's too much to do. So that is a nice compliment, because most of it's free. One question on the transportation grant, like understanding, have you looked into, you know, talking to the seniors transportation bus and the county, like both of them, you know, fund busing, and it may or may not be an option, but you know, that might be something, because I understand, you know, trying to get people that are I don't know how to word it, that they have no way of getting there, so we're offering them a service that we can do that. So it's maybe something, an actual possibility.
Through the chair, we have approached DSTS about the
Right.
possibility of extending those services, and they have some staffing concerns and whatnot right now, so they can't consider it at this point, but we definitely want to work with them on a plan, because we want to use the structures that we already have in place, and certainly the MARD development, that is what's going to help us branch, like us and Yellowhead County, Jasper, and Hinton together, in hopes that we can, you know, I guess make that whole trek to Edmonton in a coordinated way.
Right, that was the reason I was mentioning, because it's related to staffing, so a lot of times it's staffing issue, you can utilize the buses more, therefore you can hire more, because some of them are part-time drivers. I'm thinking outside the box. The town has funded them for a while, and it's helped them grow, but if we can utilize it, because they're in great shape now, like they have 2 really good buses and the 3rd, so I think if we can work hand in glove, it just helps for the town's funding to keep it going, and so I think it's, you know, virtually plus to make it happen, but
Yes.
virtually good job in what you've been doing, working well, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Curry?
Through the chair, can you just refresh my memory with the seniors coordinator? How many municipalities does she cross over?
She's based out of Hinton, and she covers Yellowhead County, Hinton, and Edson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She doesn't go as far as Jasper,
Okay, perfect. Thank
but
you.
she does. She covers
I was
a
thinking
really
it was
large area.
Fairly large area.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilkinson and Mayor Sahara?
Okay, first, through the chair to our CAO, being that we're not going to have a meeting for a while, would it be appropriate to just have a handshake of councillors if they'd like to have a letter of support for us to use through FCSSA, so that they do a resolution to government, and also to use as a letter to the minister to ask that they get sustainable funding for that position?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, I mean, that would be comfortable. I'm not sure if there's a time frame or a time constraint on that.
Job runs out at the end of December, so I think really there is.
Yeah, so I personally, I think it would probably still be appropriate to bring that to a meeting in July. I don't think that would compromise the ability for the minister to consider that.
Okay, so we'll leave it to July. Okay, just one more
Go ahead.
thing. Through the chair, this morning we were invited to the Red Brick for a tour of the Red Brick. And really, if Ally wanted to find out how to get volunteers, they do something pretty magical there. I don't know how many people were there this morning, 20 at least, if not more. So they have something that attracts people to come there. So I guess we need to find those things out. But thank you very much for all the work you're doing on behalf of everything, but especially FCSS. Thank you.
Mayor Sahara?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You talked about neighborhoods and doing more within neighborhoods, and we have all these wonderful parks. And I think the Green Shacks have really added a component that has brought some of those neighborhoods together. And I think the block parties are a huge benefit if people would take advantage. So maybe if you want to talk about what the block parties are, for those that are not aware, and have you had any uptake this year with that program?
Okay, through the chair, right now again, for some reason, we have a hard time getting this program off the ground. It's very underutilized. We do have up to 5 grants available at $200 a piece, and that can pay for supplies and food and that sort of thing. We have actually received a grant from Alberta Health Services through an initiative where we're going to be getting a block party trailer that's going to have items and, you know, road closure things, and just basically it's going to be like a party in a trailer that they can just pull up and open up, and they'll have what they need to have their party. It's a little bit overwhelming, I think. Our documents and whatnot and policies are maybe a bit restrictive as to what is needed. So another thing that we're doing, Ali has actually simplified some of the documents, and I guess just trying to remove some barriers that people say, oh wow, that's way too much work or way too much red tape. One really easy way to make things not so cumbersome is if you don't need a road closure, then you don't need to go door to door to door and get 75% of your neighbors on board to close the road. You can just essentially hold a party on your front lawns or in a community park or what have you. We would just ask that they register that block party with us, because then, you know, obviously the town, our CMP, all of our protective services, Citizens on Patrol, all of our groups that are involved in that can be part of it.
That's Curry.
So through the chair, does that trailer's it gonna have a barbecue in it?
I'm not sure yet.
Because I know, like when my block had it, we I don't know, I don't want to say it was Repso's barbecue. I wanted to make sure I was saying the right barbecue. It was Repso's, and it was great. They brought down the big, huge barbecue for us. But I do think that would be, if even the barbecue, everything's in that trailer.
Yeah.
It would really.
Actually, through the chair, I have to go back and say, no, what we're actually looking at doing is creating in part of the pamphlet is that you can get barbecues from like X amount of, and listing all the different companies that have them. And so it'll give them the opportunity to just make a few phone calls and get a community partner to come and join. And it also builds community when you have these corporations involved, right? So yeah, they have all these great barbecues and we like using them.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I have to ask, at these parties, do you encourage the use of recyclable things rather than just the styrofoam plates and cups, or borrowing from the recycle depot? They have the real plates and the real cups, and you just have to wash them commercially and return them.
Through the chair, I think that that's a really great idea. I can't remember if that's something that we've actually pointed out in there. I know there's a lot of tips on having a successful block party and things to consider, and you know, I'll make sure that that's included.
I wish you would, because I think we as a town should be doing that.
Yeah, yeah, and they also have the trailer for recyclables and garbage and that sort of thing too.
And now one that's going to make popcorn or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you can kettle and make the popcorn.
Doesn't sound like fun.
No. I guess, you know, thank you, Tanya. I have to say on the transportation with our senior transportation bus, what we didn't know through the Boys and Girls Club is that the Boys and Girls Club can use them too. And they pay just a nominal fee per child. So sometimes when they go to different places in town here, if you got 6 or 7 kids, instead of walking and they're young, you know, they'll come and pick you up. You pay a $5 fee per child, and they're more than happy to come and help with the Boys and Girls Club. They've been doing it actually quite a few times here, and the one thing we found was when they got off the bus, the kids all turned around and said, "Thank you very much, we really enjoyed it." And the bus driver just couldn't believe, you know, our young youth, you know, how polite they were in that age. And she said, "Anytime, we'll come for sure in that age." So that's just another thing for transportation in the town here, so thank you. Is there any other questions? No? Okay, thank you, Tanya.
Okay,
Very good
thank you for
report.
having me.
Appreciate it.
For a great job.
Okay, moving on then. Reports from staff. Kisman Park resurfacing.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have anything to add unless there's questions from council. Just a little change of direction, and we wanted to make sure council was supportive.
Mayor Zahar and Councillor Byer.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to relay that I'm glad that Garnet did some research and found out this information, and I support the new plan moving forward.
Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to CAO, and as well as to Mayor Zahar's comments. I'm glad that administration was able to find this out before we proceeded. I did have a question about the wood fibers. Is there any anticipation that they would get clogged up in the drains, or that they would be easier to remove than the pea gravel?
Thank you. So there's a couple pieces there. One thing that parks find is that kids are less likely to transport the wood fibers in buckets, or they're just not that fun to play with, quite honestly. And so we're hopeful that less of that material will make its way out of the park surface, as well as they do float rather than sink, which is a much different dynamic for how it interacts with the drainage system. It is something we'll definitely have to monitor and keep our eye on, but we certainly feel it would be an improvement over what we're dealing with at this point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Curry and Councillor Sorensen.
Right, every time. Well done. Through the chair, just to CEO, yeah, excited to see this. Also really excited to see more going into the shade structures. I've had multiple people comment to that, and with our cancer indicators in the community, that was a major. So I think it's really important that we're starting to add those shade structures to our local parks.
Councillor Sorensen.
Yeah, I'm in full support of this proposal. Through the chair to administration, are we gonna see a budget before it's finally approved? And then, like, I know there's a variety of shade structures that you sent, so I'm just wondering, how you're gonna choose one, or if we're gonna see this again?
Yeah, thank you. No, we won't be coming back to council to ask for specifics on colors, types, benches. That's something that administration will do the review on. Once the budget is approved, then we would just proceed with that program. Yeah.
Councillor Wiggleton.
Through the chair, just a question. You know, when you talk about this poured in place, I don't really quite understand what that is.
Yeah. Through the chair, if you've been to a park where they have a rubbery surface, that's the poured in place rubber
And
surface
all
there.
poured in place, because the Bowman for Memorial in Whitecourt, like, it is poured in place for the sidewalk. But then there's more like block systems that are used that would be different than a poured in place. So I guess that's what I was wondering.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I have seen or been to parks where they do have pads or those types of things
Like
that
movable,
are
almost movable pads, so that wouldn't be poured in place.
I'm not quite sure. It depends on the park that you're speaking of. Some of them are poured in place and are just there, and others may be mats or that type of thing that may be movable. But.
So did you consider that at all, like a mat type thing? Because it's funny that the schools moved away from wood chips because of infection and bugs and everything to the pea gravel, and now it's sort of going back again. So I'm just surprised that something else hasn't been invented that works better.
So yeah, as indicated in the memo, so our initial research was the poured in place rubber surface was the latest, greatest, and in some ways it is.
On a running track or something.
Yeah. Initially very good with playgrounds, but can run into durability issues, and because it is so much more expensive, if you're only getting 3 or 4 or 5 years out of the surface, it becomes really terribly expensive. The other thing that we found is mostly we discussed with the Parks Department in Calgary, who maintains dozens and dozens and dozens of park, is that the poured in place surfaces actually struggle to pass the fall tests that are associated with the parks. And then you're having expensive repairs and expensive changes, and they've gone back almost exclusively to the wood fibers. Yeah, and so it's, yes, the pendulum sometimes swings back and forth and those types of thing, and wouldn't you know, the good old-fashioned wood fibers are actually in favor, and so you probably can expect to see more of that at least in the near future in our park system. And potentially, will there be something that comes in the future that is better or addresses some of the concerns? Absolutely, that's always possible. But
maybe recycled styrofoam.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's all kinds of things that are done and possible out there, and including rubber chips, but they're just, again, the cost is, that's right. Yeah, the cost becomes the issue, so, but we're certainly committed to trying to provide the best value that we can for these projects.
Councillor Schnard?
Actually, a lot of the question and answer, I'm just pleased we are moving forward, but that's what I was gonna question, the same thing, is like for schools that went from sand to rock to wood, you know, all of them had their plus and bonus. But the one I'm thinking with, the thing with all the recycling stuff, depending on this area where they're running into plastics and rubber and stuff, we should check into granting, because sometimes there is granting that we're putting in large mats of recyclable products, and there's a lot of different variations of it out there, so I mean, for a temporary fix, I agree, the wood chips make sense, but maybe it would be something that, through our recycling society, they always have this magical power of finding us recyclable from the garbage things on Main Street to bike racks. We could look into something like that, because this matting, we could use it temporary there, and who knows, we can, you know, while we're setting up other parks, it might be something we can reuse, so, and just throwing it out there might be a good possibility.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on, Municipal Parks Public Use Bylaw.
All right, so, Mr. the Chair, good morning. Yeah, basically this one right here, just kind of the main things that we're trying to get at with it is to, in the case of events, when people are using the parks, is to protect the town from liability and also to further ensure the safety of the public. Lots of these things are happening already. It's kind of the best practice type thing, but this just kind of gets it in writing and just kind of really formalizes it for the town. So we're just here to kind of seek feedback and see what you guys think of it.
Any questions? Mayor Shahir?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Scott. So I went through this and I got a couple concerns. Under 3.3 and 3.4, those 2 points seem to contradict each other. It states no event shall commence before 8 a.m. or continue past 11 p.m., including any required setup or cleanup. And then the following point says the applicant is responsible for setup of the park and facilities. The setup must not commence before 7 a.m. on the day of the event. So there's a little inconsistency there. I think 8 a.m. is a little late if you're having an earlier event. And then the other point, 3.7, tents, tables, chairs, portable toilets, or other temporary structures must be approved by the town. I certainly understand the portable toilets part, but are we getting a little overboard with tables and chairs? You're having an event, you're putting up a couple chairs, we gotta get an approval on that. I think it's a little bit overboard. And I was really happy to see 3.11 included in this. So those are just some comments, and I don't know if you have any clarification like that.
Yep, no, so just through the chair, in regards to that, basically, yeah, these are just some things that we gathered from other bylaws and just kind of looking around in general, but we can definitely take a look at those things and just kind of reevaluate those based on events that are happening in the community if needs be. Yeah.
Councillor Boyer, Councillor Schnard, and Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair. So I also have a couple questions. Mine now refer to 3.1 about no physical barriers in front of the park, and I'm looking at like Lomar Park, how that fits in. I know there are gates. I don't believe they close them anymore, but I know one time they did, and how that may impact it. As well as 3.3, and I'm looking at Vision Park when I think of this, is that no event shall continue past 11 p.m. I know a lot of different groups have had bands or parties or celebrations out there that continue much past 11 p.m. and I was just wondering how that would be considered in this bylaw.
And I guess to answer that, something we could also include with the past 11 p.m. thing is we could make a thing where if they got permission from the town, it could be past 11. So most routine events, we could make it so that, yeah, 11 is usually the deadline, but for special circumstances, a Canada Day or events like that, they could get town approval. That's something we could look at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Nord and Councillor Wilkinson.
Okay, I don't know if it's in here or not because I went through most of it, but one of them is when you're putting on events that are multiple days, if we consider the overnight camping of not a bunch unit, but one for security reasons. So like in something that I'm involved in, a lot of times security is very important. It's a cost, so if, let's say, people are setting up their tents and stuff, and sometimes that helps. And in some special cases have the consideration that you're maybe parking one camping unit close to the venue, and the purpose is for security.
Okay.
You know, and I went through it and I couldn't see where that would fit in. And then the time-wise, I have to agree with the comment earlier. We may have a standard time to use the parks, but depending what you're setting up, you may have to be in at 5 a.m. And I'm gonna go back, use an example when they have the actual pig roast, where the individual may be starting at 1 o'clock in the morning, so technically he's starting the event that they are roasting the pig that starts in time. So depending on the venue, if you're gonna do a 7 o'clock start, you might have to be on scene by 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So as long as we have that consideration in there to be flexible on the time, and also too, if you're doing, let's say, a 3-4 day event, something like our, used to be Sidewalk Jamboree. So if we're doing that, let's say at Centennial Park, or now that we took it over the Kinsman Ballpark, looking outside the box, someone may want to set up something out there and utilize that, but we have to be, as long as we're open to that for the reason, I like the direction we're going. It does answer a lot of questions on who's liable.
Okay. Excellent.
Thanks.
Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor
Okay, just through the chair, when he mentioned 3.11 there, vehicles not permitted in the grass areas, when they do have that show and shine down, we let the cars park on the grass, right? So
It does
that would
make
be an exemption then?
well, it does in there. It does says unless approved by the town. So that would just be a
So then that
circumstance where we would
okay,
give
good,
approval.
Good, because we do it already, okay, good.
Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair, my question is about 2.7 and the $3 million of insurance. I'm wondering how onerous that is, if there's any, if you've seen any numbers, how expensive that is. And then secondly, we're only saving harmless the town of Edson. Is there any, I'm just wondering if they need liability insurance in general, just for the public, not just town employees.
Scott, would you like me to?
We
maybe
can
address that?
tag team this, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead. You go.
Yeah, I'll just kind of start through the chair. Originally, we did have it at 1 million, and as me and Jim were going through these, we decided that 3 million would be a little bit safer, just to, you know, give us a little bit more insurance in that regard. And we haven't really looked in depth how much that would cost for people doing the events, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can certainly add to that. So special event insurance is actually really, really affordable. For $75 or $100, you could probably accomplish this. I think also we would definitely give consideration to groups that already have liability and other insurances in place, which is the case for almost any organized group. And so I think our bigger picture is just to ensure that they have some form of appropriate insurance that would protect the town in the case of something transpiring there. And so it is considered general liability as well, but we would ask that they specifically, in a special event insurance permit, indicate the town.
So to follow up on that, so other, like I assume you looked at other bylaws from similar sized towns, and they don't require insurance for just public?
Yeah, I would defer to Scott, who's done most of the research on that. But.
Yeah, so through the chair, in regards to this, basically this is more so for events, so just kind of for general public use. It's just kind of, there's not really any insurance or how would I put it, insurance they can get just for like going to play at the park or something like that. This is more so for organized events. That's more what this bylaw is geared towards. Yeah.
Councillor Curry?
Through the chair, most of my questions have been answered. Just on 3.15, just nitpicking, but when it is the sale of food and beverages, your examples you use the business license, special occasion, liquor license. I think definitely health inspection forms need to be in there. I just know that we've had lots of barbecues and such going on around in the community that often don't fill out the proper, and so I think it should be listed specifically.
Okay. I guess through the chair, and 3.16, it does kind of briefly mention that, but we could clarify that.
Yeah, that was
more
about
in
cooking,
depth,
but
yeah.
it's a totally to even if you're not cooking and
Okay.
selling that, it should be done. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Mine have been asked and answered, so I'm happy. Well, good job, and I look forward to having it.
I think too, if I may just add, Scott mentioned some of the purposes, and I think one of the key one too is just that there's really consistency as groups approach us to use our spaces, that we have common standards, and all groups or organizations are being asked to be mindful of the same things and understanding the general parameters of of those. It's really not intended to be restrictive. That's not the intent here. It's just to put those important considerations out there so that people are aware and understand them when they consider using of public spaces.
I guess when if it's we're gonna get to see this again, do we get to see in yellow or red what requests were
With
highlighted?
adjustments?
Yeah, adjustments to us, so we know what's going on, so we don't have to kind of try to find it and what council brought up.
And just further to the point, I think that needs to be our standard procedure moving forward. We've had that happen a couple
Yes.
times where it's hard to tell what's changed, so.
For sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Scott. Okay, moving on. Public spaces smoking bylaw.
All right, so through the chair, I guess, got this one as well. And basically, just for a bit of background for this, this is kind of course, as mentioned in the RFR, it's in anticipation of the cannabis legislation. And the main thing right here is basically to protect people in public spaces. It's going to be more of a nuisance-based one where people are causing problems, we have grounds to find them. And also at the same time, we're kind of taking advantage of this to be kind of a catch-all thing. It's, you know, with enforcement and stuff like that, it'll be, in some cases, it'll be tricky to tell, like, okay, what are they smoking, what are they not smoking? And in this instance, it just kind of makes it easy across the board, so we're not singling out one group or the other. So just here for feedback, and yeah, let me know what you think.
Councillor Nard, Councillor Byer.
Okay, the most important thing we have to look at that is, as a smoker is well known, I don't like the fact that they compare cannabis smoking to regular smoking. We need to keep cannabis smoking more towards alcohol, because if somebody is vaping or having a cigarette, and most smokers are very kind and considerate, that we have to make sure that they're not mixing them up, because if someone does get a whiff of a vape or a cigarette secondhand smoke, will not have the same effect on the person if they're smoking, even though legal cannabis. But it's very important, we need to have it, yes, smoking, but it's alcohol. You can't have a beer in the park, that way you cannot consume marijuana, because, you know, cigarettes are legal. So I went through it, but as long as we keep that comparison, because I wouldn't want to see someone being tagged in the same pattern as, oh my God, they're over standing in the corner of the park smoking a regular cigarette versus marijuana. There is a difference in smell, and we have to have it so bylaw can come up and say, hey, what are you consuming? Because it could be in vapes or whatever. So smell. So we're on the right direction, but just always bear that in mind, there is a difference.
I think it's important to note that this bylaw is specifically designed not to make any distinction between materials being smoked, whether they're being vaped or cannabis or tobacco. I just want to make that clear, that that is specifically how the bylaw is designed.
Councillor Byer, Councillor Curry, Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair, thank you for bringing this up. It was something I was anticipating coming forward. So I can appreciate that the strict policy set, because it's certainly, I think, easier to start here than the other direction. But I do have a concern about the public spaces. So if we talk about the parks, and I'm going to use an example like a Vision Park, if there's like a tournament or a festival of some sort going on there, is there an opportunity to have like how we used to have like the beer garden set up, where you have like a separate area over here, you have to have special security for, you know, like a smoking area, or are we just going to be redirecting people to the sidewalks or the roads or their parking lots to consume?
Through the chair, I guess our primary approach would be to do the approach of saying, look, we have the roads and sidewalks, this area is designated for smoking, but given extenuating circumstances, it's something we could look at making a specific smokers area. But just kind of, I guess our general approach would say you can still go on the roads and the right-of-ways and the sidewalks. Yeah.
And I think to add to that, even with areas, you know, something like Vision Park or something like Repsol Place, for example, where we know there's going to be many people there and still a number of people who are smoking, I think having, whether or not we ask them to move to the street like they do at the new hospital site, right, but they still have receptacles and benches and those types of things. So I think being mindful of that. One of the things that we did talk about was the possibility of, excuse me, designated areas being a potential piece that we can consider. I think in particular for something like a large event, but the general dynamic, I think in the lay of the land is it's becoming more and more common for communities to just say our public spaces are 100% no smoking. And it's not to say that we need to do that, but that is the general trend that we are observing.
Thank you. Just say I'm in full support of this. No surprise, everyone. Anyway. And I've already said it in another topic today, but this was a huge indicator on our cancer and the health of our community. And I think we are behind the game in this. One of the things that shows a healthy community is bylaws around smoking in public parks. And it is often an issue, especially, I love the idea that people are respectful, but I have been at Kinsman Park on more than one occasion where people are right there, right on the benches, right at the splash park, going ahead, and their lack of respect for families around it, and I think for the health of our community, this is extremely important.
Councilor Sorensen, you're next. Go ahead.
Through the chair to administration, I'm in full support of this bylaw. I agree with the rationale of having no difference between the treatment of tobacco products or cannabis products. I don't think we want our bylaw officers trying to figure out which product is being used. This is a much simpler and way to manage the issue. I would support the addition of some kind of designated area section where events or facilities could have a designated area to waive some of these bylaws. And then I do have a concern about trails being considered a public space, but sidewalks not being considered a public space. Our master trails plan uses sidewalks for a variety of trails, so it's designated both as a sidewalk and as a trail. So I think we need to clarify, I think they need to be treated the same way. So if we're going to treat trails as a non-smoking area, I believe the sidewalks have to be non-smoking as well. I don't think there's any way to distinguish the two of those.
Mayor Zaher and Councilor Chenard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would support designated areas, and I think it's important that we have receptacles. What I don't want to see is pushing people outside of the parks, and we have cigarette butts and materials all over our parking lots. So as we're developing this, I think it's critically important that we have those mechanisms in place. Bring an interesting point out on the trails. See, I look at trails a little differently than a park. I'm not as concerned with people smoking on a trail as I would be in a park, because they're moving and there's you're not necessarily staying in one spot. So I think some thinking needs to go around that. At the same time, we also have fire hazards within our trail system, which is also concerning. So I think we have to weigh those things and consider that moving forward. But certainly would support designated areas in all of our parks with the receptacles in place.
Councilor Nard, Councilor Byer.
Me next?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, a lot of it has been answered, because yes, that is a concern, is the smokers, you push them out on the sidewalks and the road. I guess on the other hand, there's 5 out of smoking, non-smokers gotta walk right through you, so, to give consideration. So I like the idea, yes, a designated area, and most importantly, ashtrays so they can, because the problem you run into, if you chase them all away, then you're sneak smoking, you're running behind, and I've got into BC where, oh my God, you might as well pulled out a gun. They look at you, you just lit up a cigarette in the park. So you have to be cautious on that. And I stress again, the thing is, we need to keep the consideration, because what'll happen, there's a smoking area over there, and if we don't keep them apart, unless you put your nose in there to find out, with the new vaping and technology coming out, how do you know if it's legal or not? So I stress again, marijuana is a drug, same as booze. But we need to, I like we're putting on, but I just caution that wording, but don't chase people too far away, because then you got more problem. Prime example in Ottawa, I walked up and I said, am I allowed to smoke? Yes, you are. Where's the ashtrays? Well, we're trying to discourage you, there is none. I said, okay, what do I do with my cigarette butt? I can't put it in the garbage. So a lot of these, we gotta look across the country on how they are. If you want smokers to be courteous, there gotta be ashtrays. But taking the ashtrays away, now what do you do? but we need to have an area, and don't put it on a roadway, don't put it in the doorway, that's the worst thing you can do, because you're standing on the road saying, well, I'm allowed to smoke here, and people have to walk by. Choose an area that's down, it's not always downwind, but it's kind of an area then that people know, okay, it's okay to go smoke there, but if you chase it away, you're gonna force people to hide to smoke, and that's more of a problem.
Councilor Byer?
Through the chair, to administration. So I know we still have to, this will come before council and we'll have a few readings. What is a kind of a timeline after it's passed and any educational campaigns that you would have to the residents on this initiative or change?
I have a few thoughts on that, and then Scott, you can maybe add anything to that. I think, sorry, I think too, bylaws can be active or passive, right? And so in terms of enforcement, that's the other thing we have to consider is, are we passing an active enforcement bylaw or a passive enforcement bylaw? And I think generally speaking that this is more of a passive enforcement bylaw. We're not going to be out chasing and looking and setting up blinds in the park where our people are, monitoring this. But what it does allow us for is when there is a nuisance or when someone smoking is causing for other people to enjoy the space less, we have those mechanisms in place to deal with it. And so that's just, I think, something important to be mindful of is the enforcement piece on that as well. So, but.
Councilor Sorensen.
Through the chair to administration, can you refresh my memory on what the penalty is for this offense if someone is caught smoking on public space? And maybe just a comment that hopefully we can get that included in the report details, because it's never going to be in the same bylaw, the fee. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Scott, you that hadn't been determined yet. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
that's correct, yeah.
But it will be coming forward as part of future reports.
Councilor Curry, Councilor Byer, the Mayor Sahara, I believe? No. Councilor Wilkinson, sorry.
Just a comment. I wouldn't say that I wanted this active as in enforcement, but I would want this active as in promotion, because it is currently not a standard. So I think for it to even be remotely followed, we would have to do some active promotion, so people knew that change. So I would expect, if the bylaw was passed, that it was active in promotion, not as much active in enforcement.
Councilor Byer?
Through the chair to administration, so my comment continues with Councilor Curry is as far as that timeline and education, where there be signage at the parks or in these places where we've now changed the bylaw, I guess is where I was getting at. So people do know that if they want to be respectful and follow the bylaw, that they have the means of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. There would be our intention to have an active public communication piece associated with any type of policy change of this nature, as well as appropriate signage that may support that as well.
Councilor Wilkinson?
I do believe that we have to provide a place for them to smoke, probably a bench and a receptacle. Like, I live near Kinsman Park and I'm in there a fair amount, and I think, just speaking on behalf of the kids that are in there, they should not have to put up with the cigarette smoke that they do now. Everybody just sits on the benches and smokes away. But again, these parents are supervising their children when they're there, and they are smokers. So I think we have to accommodate them, have a place where they still can see the kids and have their cigarette. And again, when you talk about the Trail System Council, Sorensen, I think it's dangerous to have people smoking on the trail system with the hazard we have for forest fires. So I would just like it to be included the same as sidewalks. And we do need to have the receptacle somewhere. If we just say go smoke in the parking lot, you're just asking for a big mess, I think. So that's just my views on that. But I do think we will have to enforce it, because I don't think kids should have to sit through cigarette smoke when they're at the spray park.
Councilor Sorensen?
Through the chair to Councilor Wilkinson, my comment was that we should treat sidewalks and trails the same. And the way it's written now, that you're allowed to smoke on a sidewalk, but you're not allowed to smoke on a trail.
Not allowed both.
I think it should just be the same, one or the other, and I could be argued either way.
Yeah.
If I may, just before we move on, because I think some clarity for administration on what direction that you want us to go on the sidewalks and trails would be helpful. I think if we say no smoking on sidewalks, enforcement is going to be incredibly problematic. And so I don't think it's realistic for us to say you can't smoke on sidewalks. And I do think we can make a distinction between our trail system and sidewalks for the purposes of something like this. I'm not saying we must or could, I just think that is possible or reasonable. And so maybe perhaps council could give some feedback on that specifically.
Councillor Nart, Councillor Curry, Mayor Zaher, Councillor Wilkinson.
We are beating this up, but I do like the
Yes.
idea that we need the power if it becomes a problem, like in a certain area, that we have, that way they have the power. If one person's over having to say that, no problem, but if there's a whole group and it's interfering with a public event, I agree with the thing, we need that power. We're not gonna hire a bunch of bylaws to follow it, but we need that power. If it's a problem, we can contact RCMP or bylaw and say, hey, it's being enforced, and it just sort of contains it. So that I agree with. Like you're saying, sidewalks, well, that'd be a hard one to top, because same token is you have children with you, and hey, I'm having a smoke break. You have your car parked on Main Street. You're gonna stand in the road. You're gonna step out of your vehicle and have smoke. It's against a lot of smoke in the vehicle. So we have to take that consideration. But on the same token, you can't have 15 people standing out front of the drugstore smoking the whole sidewalk up. It works two ways.
Councillor Curry.
I think I would be leaning towards yes, that the trails need to be included, and mainly because I feel the purpose of this is that it will be the same with cannabis. And as a regular trail user in the evenings around 5 o'clock, it's a regular place that the usage is. And so I do not think that that's acceptable in the trails, and I think that you cannot distinguish between tobacco and cannabis when we have our bylaws. I think for enforcement, that's just not realistic, so I think the trails do need to be considered, because that's a problem.
Mayor Zaher.
Yeah, I agree. I think, listening to conversation, I'm more concerned about the forest fire risk more than anything within our trail system, with individuals being irresponsible. So I would support no smoking in our trail system. And further to the enforcement piece, I think when it comes to Kinsman Park and the spray park and the kids and the ages of the kids there, I think it should be a zero tolerance approach. That's a space that there should not be people smoking in that park space. With the amount of kids there, some of the other parks around town, we have a lot of passive parks where there's not a lot of activity. I think that would be a more passive approach, but I've been to Kinsman Park where I see multitudes of parents smoking right there, and it's not good for the kids. So.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair,
Councillor Byron.
just a thought, when you talk sidewalks, and now I see your point, you can't really eliminate everyone walking down the street with a cigarette, but could we say sidewalks adjacent to public parks, so that they aren't just out of the park, standing there smoking, putting their butts?
I think the only problem with that is we talk about making sure they have a place to go, but then if we eliminate the sidewalk adjacent to the park,
Let's
now
make a
we're just
proper place
making.
where they can go, this is your assigned area, here's your seats, here's your things, but don't go smoke on the sidewalk and leave your butts up there.
Yeah, and in terms of that, I think in any designation, receptacles is, I think, inherent in creating any specific space. And even if we don't create a specific space in a place like Kinsman Park, if we say you can't smoke here, we want you out smoking on the sidewalk, we would just, I think, naturally place a few receptacles. And I think those would become the places that people would smoke in those areas.
I'd sooner have a designated spot so the parents can still see their kids and they can smoke there down here.
Councillor Byron.
Through the chair to administration, my view on the trails is I think if people are walking along on the sidewalk through the natural trail system and then go to the treat areas, if there was appropriate signage saying no smoking as they enter, like how we have no snowmobiles and other signage on there already, if there was something that said no smoking, then I think that would help with a better distinction to identify that. And to follow up on Mayor Zaher's comments on an active Kinsman Park policing of this bylaw, I think that it might be necessary, and but we also do need a specific area, whether that is the road. I don't know if that's quite the best area, but if there was an appropriate area that they can still see their kids, then I think that might be more ideal, and they can still be respectful.
I don't think it's really possible to have a smoking zone and a non-smoking zone like right directly adjacent to the park. It's going to have to be removed at least some distance, right? You can't say on this side of the line you can smoke, but on this side of the line you can't smoke. That's not really in a public open air space. The wind's just blowing this way or that way. It's just not reasonable. I think what we're talking about is those spaces would look like what they look like at the hospital. Out on the street, away from the park areas, is your designated area.
Then you're putting it under my condo window.
There's more parts to the street than just there. But I'm just using that for context because I think what we envision administratively is it would look like what it looks like at the hospital. There's a bench, there's a receptacle, but it's right out on the street. It's not. Yeah, I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, we're gonna just move you 10 feet away from the spray park and you can still see your kids and all that type of thing. That's just not really gonna work.
Parents need to supervise their children.
Councillor Sorensen and Councillor Chenard.
Through the chair to administration, I agree with the point, we don't want smoking on trails for a fire hazard, but on the same token, I don't want cannabis smoked in front of the movie theater or in front of the banks or in front of any of my main street or there's no reason for cannabis to be smoked down there, so I still stand by my comment that I don't think smoking should be allowed on sidewalks.
No, thank you for that feedback, yep.
Through the chair, just
Yes.
something, just something to keep in mind is in the provincial regulations, there already are proposed like distances away from windows and doorways where you can't smoke, and it's going to be the same for cannabis. So there still is stuff in place for that where you can't smoke within, I think it's 5 meters of doorways and windows and air intakes. So
Which
there's
basically
that,
eliminates things like Main Street and that type of thing, generally speaking. But I think your point is well taken, is that we have to be considerate of that dynamic and how it may change and where we are comfortable with that taking place and where we aren't. And we may be able to consider some designation between commercial property is somewhat more of a public space than private residence, right? As in many people may be coming to patronize a business or something like that. And so we may be able to consider that as a variable in terms of, just a residential sidewalk out in a neighborhood. We're not going to treat that the same as a commercial or what may be more public. We'll have to give that some thought. But.
Councillor Chenard.
I was just gonna comment, we are virtually beating this to death. I believe this is a thing to gather information, take it to our fall retreat, because a lot of the stuff like what sparked this is cannabis.
August is or September is.
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't think we can functionally wait until retreat
This
to
October is when the
pass
law's
this.
coming in. Because it's been changed now, like you're saying, the marijuana, because what we're doing is marijuana, and that's what I'm saying, without changing any laws, the laws of the land that applies right now, 99% controls marijuana and alcohol. So without changing any new rules, like you said, we already have rules in place. And I appreciate the fact that we're stepping ahead, but using the laws that are in place right now, we are covered. But I agree for nuisance smoking, that's when we pinpoint. But if you follow the laws, because I've been challenged on it, I've followed them a lot, we already have laws through the province that helps to regulate what we're trying to do. So we're beating ourselves up over this, following the laws of the land, we're already covered, and then we can pinpoint the other ones.
Councillor Curry.
Quickly, I disagree with you. I think we should have this in and sooner than later. And just in case it doesn't come up again, when we're talking about where we do designate things, just you were using the hospital, just being really smart with placement. It's really well that they're off the property, but it's also the very first site that everybody sees, and it has some serious negative visuals to the community. So just with our own parks, I would hate for our parks to be the first thing you see when you pull up to one of our beautiful parks is smoking. So just being really smart with the Parks Department on placement so that that's not the visual that the public sees.
Okay. I guess my question is, right now, we have this 5 meter smoke, and I'd like to see, I'm gonna pick on Repsol Place, for example.
Yeah.
I see the people standing around right outside the red line by the door there, and we don't enforce it. I've never seen anybody get a ticket in that. Are our bylaw officers gonna be able to enforce this with the regular, the CPO2s right now? Have that ability to do that enforcement?
Yeah, thank you. Not with provincial jurisdictions, but if we pass a municipal bylaw that gives them that ability, they would then have the ability to do that.
I do agree, we have to move them off there You know, you go down to July 1st here, for example, you got 500-600 people there, and they start smoking, and it goes right through the whole crowd and that. And people end up leaving. And we get, you know, it's not a good thing in that. I believe we have to do something with this. And we have to be able to enforce it, and that's gonna be the biggest thing is enforcement.
Right.
And then if you don't have the receptacles out there, they throw them on the ground, so you're gonna hit them for the littering too, plus get a smoking fine. You know, so I mean, it's a big thing, we gotta, you know.
I think, Scott, is there anything else specifically that you want to know before you take this away and do some more work? I think we've got some really good feedback from council. Thank you.
So yeah, through the chair, just kind of mainly for clarification, I guess the main thing is just in regards to smoking areas, basically whether it's going to be roads and sidewalks, where we're going to place them, that's the main thing to focus on, and also differentiation between trails, or like defining further what a sidewalk is, just more clarification on that. Just in terms of enforcement, and bylaw enforces, I feel those are some of the main takeaway points. Anything else?
No, doesn't look like, but I think you got lots of information there, and I think same thing, I agree with Councilor Curry here, that, you know, we do this now rather than later, and let's get it done in time for our summer months here coming up, and that's for sure.
Excellent. All right, well.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Protective Service, Community Standards Bylaw and Public Conduct Bylaw.
All the smoke talk as you go for a break.
So just as Al gets set up here, and please clarify if I'm wrong here, I think the intent is not necessarily to go through this bylaw today in detail, but it was more to give an idea of the composition of the bylaw, and then to let council know about the public engagement plan and bringing that back as piece of the information for council's consideration. But Al will go through that in more detail.
You shouldn't get beat up too bad, Al. We're getting tired.
I think Scott took most of the heat, so.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an opportunity. We just want to talk a little bit about community standards and public conduct. They're two separate bylaws. Everybody has received the draft copies of the two bylaws. So basically, this presentation will just kind of touch base on the highlights of those bylaws and how we came to the rationale behind the design of that. Over the last year, we've had the opportunity to take a good look at some of our existing bylaws as it relates to community standards. In particular, I think the two on the community standards. This.
Just the arrow.
There we go. So under the community standards, really it was our nuisance bylaw and our noise bylaw were the two ones that we kind of focused on originally. As we went through those and flushed through those and living and breathing the enforcement side, we realized that there was a lot more issues within our community that had to be addressed, and hence that's why we came up with developing our community standards bylaw. The new bylaw will focus on really three key areas. One is the property maintenance side of our community. The second one was unsightly conditions within our community. These are actual pictures within our community, by the way. These are not off the internet. And the third one was kind of noise issues as it relates into our community as well. So those are the three main areas. We'll touch base a little bit on each area of that, and it'll be fairly quick, and we'll go through that. So under the property maintenance side of that first section, we talk about sidewalks. When we refer to sidewalks, we're talking about debris on sidewalks, snow and ice conditions on sidewalks, and the bylaw will give us the ability to get out there and do some enforcement with that. We'll talk a little bit about obstructions on sidewalks, obstructions on roads. We do come across those regularly. Water drainage issues. This kind of helps us deal with people where eavesdrops are running into their neighbor's yard. Again, this was a isolated situation we dealt with last year where the neighbor put the eavesdrop over draining directly into the neighbor's yard. It happens.
So we had was this the same one, or did we have another one where the drain was right by the fence, and so they put a board so that the water would hit the board and go into their neighbor's property? So it's unfortunately
so these are things.
They're
things that we've had to live and breathe. It's very important that our community standards bylaw gives us the ability to help our residents out. Snow on roofs. Some of the tin roofs in town have some sliding issues. This one hasn't been such a big issue, but it was in existing bylaws, and we felt it very important to maintain it within our bylaw system. Emissions. When we're talking about emissions, we're not so much talking about the open air campfires because our fire bylaw deals with that. What this deals with is like dust particles. And we had the issue last year where a gentleman was bobcat, big broom, downtown, middle of the day, dusting out the whole block area. Or people in their garages, their fire pits in their garages who are burning, hopefully not recyclables, but I'm sure they are, thick black smoke coming out. It just gives us an ability to do a little bit of enforcement dealing with those things. Outdoor storage of fridges, this is really a public safety issue. There's nothing worse than fridges that are left out there. If a kid gets in, they're not going to get out. We really want to address that. Repair of vehicles. When we talk about repair of vehicles in the bylaw, again, it's not to say you can't do it, it's you have to do what's reasonable. We don't want people out there at 2 in the morning turning wrenches or having their vehicles sitting on the street in the middle of a repair. Excavations, we do have excavations around our community. It just kind of sets a standard to make sure that they're safe and taking public safety into consideration. And noxious weeds. The noxious weeds, they will follow the Noxious Weed Act, our officers. It just kind of points in that direction. The second section of the community standards deals with unsightly conditions. We talk generally about lands, and people have to keep their land kind of neat and tidy. That's the premise of this. We get a little more detailed when we talk about grass cutting. In the grass cutting sections, we've kind of actually put a standard on the length of grass that we want to maintain, and I believe it's 15 centimeters. We've kind of looked at what other communities are doing, and that seems to be kind of right in the ballpark. So if somebody says, well, my grass is fine, but it's 1.5 feet, no, it's not. It's got to be that 15 centimeters. That's what's reasonable and that's what's practical. I'll talk about weeds and shrubs, trees and shrubs. Again, overlaying onto sidewalks or creating sight lines on intersections. It's very important that we have the ability to deal with those. Waste accumulation. If you're piling up stuff within your yard which really doesn't fit, we have the ability in the community standards to deal with it. Again, construction materials. We do see that around. People are doing some work. It's just the ability to make sure they're keeping it neat and tidy. We talk about structures and unoccupied buildings. We do have some of these buildings within our community where they're not occupied, they've been let go, they're starting to get that dilapidated, there we go, status. It gives our officers the ability to work with the property owners and get them cleaned up. That's the goal of that. The third area in the community standards deals with noise. Generally, we talk about the time of noise. We have our nighttime noise, and I believe it was 11 till 7. I could be wrong, but
that's typical.
That's typical.
Yeah.
And again, outside those, from 11 o'clock to 7 in the morning, you've got to be reasonable. You can't be making all kinds of noises. And that deals with construction areas. In particular, we've got some big construction projects happening around town. They've been really good to work with. But again, within the community standards bylaw, we want to make sure that they have the ability to make sure that they maintain what they're doing and working with inside those parameters. Residential areas. Main purpose of this is we don't want your neighbor at 4 in the morning firing up his lawnmower or his snowblower to deal with the stuff. We have had those situations. We do have some early birds in our community at 5 in the morning. They're out there snow blowing the driveway. I get it, but the neighbors don't. So we just had to have that ability to do it. So, but there are exceptions. The prime example, the picture on there, and the noise bylaw, some of the exceptions are, we understand, this is Edson, we understand there's going to be big snowfalls and that our crews have to be able to go out there at a reasonable time, and sometimes it is overnight to get the snow moved, and we totally get that. And the exceptions, we also had some good discussions with Grand Yellowhead on this, because they have contractors who have to get into those school zones and clean up their parking lots before schools arrive, and sometimes they have to be working outside what's allowable and within that 11. We get it, we've worked with them, and they've got some strategies and protocols that kind of limit the noise as well, because they understand the sensitivity in residential areas. That was a quick nutshell of the community standards. We'll jump into the public conduct. Again, we took the opportunity to look at the public conduct. Originally we were going to combine these as one bylaw, but we thought, it makes more sense to split them, where community standards deals with property maintenance and public conduct deals with human behaviors. So the public conduct bylaw has primary focus on human behaviors. It's primarily a tool that's designed to give the RCMP some tools to help enforcement in the community. Not to say our enforcement officers can not use this, they will also be able to use this public conduct bylaw, but it was really designed to help our RCMP officers. And this bylaw will focus on 5 main areas. Bullying. Everybody understands, or should understand, the necessary to have bullying within our bylaws. This was developed by the RCMP a few years ago. We just included into this because bullying is out there, and this is a tool to help us deal with that. Fighting. While fighting can be a criminal offense, in consultation with the RCMP, we felt if we can have it within a municipal bylaw, if you have two people engaged in a fight, but it's not the seriousness that they want to go criminal because a criminal record stays with you, but it's of the nature that we can lessen the charge, the RCMP, then we'd look at it through fighting through our public conduct bylaw, which made a lot of sense. Curfew, we have a curfew bylaw within our community, which limits the younger people not to be out all times of the night. Again, it's an existing bylaw that we incorporated into the public conduct bylaw already. Litter. Litter is an ongoing problem. Within this bylaw, this will give not only RCP but our enforcement officers the ability to go out and give litter fines and litter tickets within our community, so it's quite important. Urinating and spitting. This was a request.
How long did you spend Googling these pictures?
These come up real quick. It's just another tool for the enforcement officers to be able to do something through bylaw versus something more serious through criminal. A goal of these bylaws, again, will always follow our philosophy of education, information, and enforcement in dealing with these infractions. We can get the message out, let people understand that these exist, and this is where we're at. So our next part over the summer is, again, we want to do some public engagement on these bylaws, get them out there so people have good information on them. We're going to work closely with our communications coordinator. We're going to look at some approaches either through the website, local papers, social media, and some other options to get the message out. We really want to move forward with these bylaws. We've been working on them for the last 10 to 12 months, and it's time we get them out. So, questions?
Mayor Shahir, Chenard, Curry.
All right, just quickly, because I know we're short on time here. Just a point of clarification, the bullying bylaw was something developed by the Anti-Bullying Committee, not the RCMP, so I just want to clarify that back in the day. I noticed here that nighttime is noted as 10 p.m. instead of 11 p.m. I actually think that's a good thing. I think 11 p.m. we're starting to get a little late.
It could have been.
What I'm hearing from residents is I think 10 p.m. was a little bit more reasonable, for sure in the residential neighborhoods. When it comes to unsightly conditions, would this give bylaw enforcement the ability to address concerns on private property where parking lots and, say, drive-throughs are not properly maintained and could be causing hazardous conditions for motorists? Or would that still be nothing, would they not have enforcement mechanisms to deal with that?
May I ask, are you speaking like if there's big potholes?
Big potholes and...
I don't think we want to go there.
I'm just asking the question if there's any way that we can address those concerns.
No, it's more focused on the impact of the neighborhood. And we showed some of the pictures with the garbage and the debris where it's, the neighbors have a direct impact and a direct, like that's making my property value less than stuff. So.
Just come down the line.
Actually, my concern on the noise bylaw, now, we're gonna actually determine between residential and business, because a prime example, if you're a pipeline outfit and your cats are running, I mean, within reasonable cost, but the industrial parks in an oil field town, especially during spring breakup, the trucks are running all night. So as long as we have a determining thing, because if you're industrial, the other thing we have to bear in mind is when you're, let's say, servicing delivery trucks and stuff, servicing along 4th Avenue, there's backup beepers and alarms, so they would be coming into a grocery store, dropping off groceries, as well as the trucks picking up and leaving. They may have to be there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, but they're adjacent to a residential. We have to leave that in because, like the snow removal, the delivery truck has to come in early in the morning, and they will make noise. A lot of them is backup beepers.
Yeah, and I think the exceptions part of that covers off on some of that stuff. Focusing on our principles of education, information, and enforcement, we get those complaints, and noise is primarily complaint driven. The goal is to, if we have a complaint driven from a scenario like that, is to find out what's going on and how we can mitigate that complaint.
I think I may add to that, all of these contexts are educated under the principle of reasonableness, right? And so if you're a grocery store and you are having deliveries done in the early morning, that is a very normal function, and we can't reasonably restrict that. And so if you buy a house that is directly adjacent to a commercial area, what you may hear or experience is going to be different than if you're in the very back corner cul-de-sac of a residential neighborhood. And so we're certainly aware of those dynamics, and that is part of our the consideration when you come down to the enforcement side of things.
Councillor Curry.
Just a couple comments through the chair. One on times. I just think that the weekend time of 9 a.m. is actually late. I think 8 a.m. is a more reasonable time. Yes, I am a morning person, but I do think that 9 a.m., like when you think of lawn mowing and such, that feels really late to me. For a lot of people, that's half their day gone. So I just thought that was, and then just because of my own experience, even with the curfew, 6 a.m., and I know that it's not going to be enforced, but I actually do, believe it or not, I see youth out exercising between that 5 and 6 a.m. time. So I actually see them out in running gear, not many, but I do, semi-regular, and so I would just never want, like, you know, that to be, and I know that's enforcement, but just those timelines, I do wonder if 6 a.m., you know, and even walking to practice, those kind of things. Often during the school year, you'll see them heading out before that time. And then the only other thing was under the public conduct, part 2, the bullying. Just knowing the language. So when you're just talking about no person shall bully any person by electronic means, whether in written, video, pictorial, or any other format. Just adding, I know that this is like the assumption of like on public spaces or like public forums, but the wording's not in there. So that just to me, like this is, we don't have a bylaw saying, you know, GM can't bully people on their account. Is this meant for our public forums, I'm guessing? For the electronics, what is the...
Specifically like the town's medium?
Yeah, that's what
So I think
I'm
that would
asking,
be
is
more,
that, because
that would
that's
be more
really all...
specifically addressed in, like we have social media policies that cover conduct if you're interacting with our like Facebook page or that type of thing.
So
And
what
I
we're
think this is
saying,
more
like,
general public interaction between people or those types of things.
So I just have concerns then, like how would that even be, like, what we're stating, what I see right here, right now is stating if I'm bullying Councillor Sorensen on Facebook,
Yes.
the town has the right to, in my own personal
Yes.
email, they do?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I speak to this? So, when I was on council, this is where we developed this back in 2009, I think it was, 2010. So this is a mechanism, because right now within the criminal code, the RCMP only have the ability to address those concerns in schools in particular through a criminal code violation. So with this being a tool in their toolbox, they have a municipal bylaw where they can just issue a fine. So if 2 students are bullying each other on social media, they can sit the parties down and say, this needs to stop, otherwise you're gonna get this ticket. It's not, it's a tool in the toolbox, it's not something they go out there and, you know, actively look for this stuff, but, and I know that the RCMP use it quite extensively. Before their hands were tied to criminal code, well, you don't wanna charge a 16-year-old with a criminal code violation. So a municipal bylaw would allow them to use that as a way to talk with the kids and hopefully address those concerns through education or through a municipal bylaw.
And I would add, I think this is what Alan was referring to as well, that this is something that would largely be dealt with by the RCMP.
Okay.
And it gives them just more options in terms of dealing with these types of scenarios.
Thank you.
Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to administration, I don't particularly have an issue of moving a nighttime definition from 11 to 10, but I would support the same definition for night 7 days a week. I think it should just be, it's hard enough to remember, and just one consistent definition of night all the time.
And with things like shift work and other
I
things.
think we're all on a variety of schedules. I don't think it really matters if it's a weekday or weekend. Along the same lines, I'm wondering if it's palatable to have curfew for underage kids or under 16 to match the nighttime hours just for consistency. In 10.2, I noticed you can work in your car in your garage, but you can't make any noise. I'm just wondering if we need that because we already have noise section, and I don't think it's possible to work on your car without making any noise at all. Yeah, so I would just to remove it from there and leave it in the noise section.
Question 2. I noticed on your snow removal net, not even the snow removal, but I didn't see anything in there, as in the past, if you push the snow from your driveway back out onto the street, or your sidewalks back out to the street after they were cleared. Is there anything in this bylaw here that's saying that you cannot do that?
I would address it under this bylaw. We kind of focused this one on making sure you clean your sidewalks. I believe operations were working on a snow removal bylaw. Maybe we can touch base and identify that, or we can look at identifying it in here.
Yeah. So I know there are different places where people push it right back out on the street after it's been cleaned, and then you gotta drive through it all again and that, and you're just upset about it. And also, is that for cords going across the street too, across sidewalks? For obstruction?
Under the obstruction, it could be.
Yeah. And the other one was, I know, property here, just down the road here, about a block away. Every year, it's the same property. We've got dandelions and grass this high, and it goes for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and nothing's ever done about it. And it's every year, it's the same 1 or 2 properties. Every year I can remember for the last 7, 8, 9 years, and it goes on. I think we have to do a little better job in taking that up. And I know they've gotten letters and everything else and stuff like that, and nothing is done. They just don't care. So I think we have to look at that. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I do like the idea of having a clean sidewalks, and I walk in the winter, and lately it's been better, but before, I'd walk and there's the town with their sidewalks not bad. So it was sort of annoying, like, oh yeah, this is a bylaw that you have to do these things, but then you don't have it clean from the town. So I think it's really important if we expect this, that we do it as well. And I've had so many complaints from people about how unsightly places are, definitely because they haven't weeded their flower bed. And I've been looking now, it's a big thing, and I think that's sort of becoming a thing in the past, to weed your flower bed. Like, I think people are working and they're busy, so I guess all these things become a definition in whose eyes, I guess, to what's unsightly. Just a caution.
For sure.
And if I may add, I do think that we have made it a priority for our Parks Department, who does most of the snow clearing on our sidewalks, and that I believe that we are at a point where we can be comfortable expecting that of other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Boyer then, that should be it.
As the chair to administration, I really liked seeing this forward on one bylaw. I think it makes it a lot easier for everybody involved to look at it. I just have a comment about, or a concern about the emission of smoke and dust, 8.2, I believe. So this isn't talking about fireplaces or wood stoves where people use that as one of their main sources of heat, providing they don't have their flue out.
Potentially could.
Okay.
And again, this is more complaint driven. We do, from experience, when people are running their fireplaces in their houses, we've never had an issue. But we have a lot of buildings in our community where they have their outbuildings, where they've got their little wood stove in there to heat it up and do some whatever work in their garage or whatever, has created some challenges. And some of the smoke coming out of there is definitely not clean burning wood. So.
I think too, think about it like lawn mowing. Lawn mowing, sometimes it's an issue, sometimes it's not. So if you're midnight, you're out mowing your lawn, your neighbors aren't gonna like it, so we deal with it. Same thing with like outdoor, even fire pits in the back, they can be a nuisance, right? And so it's only in the circumstance where it's actually creating unpleasant circumstances where you would deal with it.
Okay, and then just a comment on the snow removal. I know in the recent years, I think the town has done an excellent job. I've seen them out on weekends with the blowers, and they often beat me to the snow removal. So good job on that.
Councillor Sorensen?
Just quickly on the bullying and fighting sections, I'm wondering if it's reasonable to have watching in there for both of those. I don't think you could fine someone for watching that. Clearly you can prevent them from recording it and distributing. You shouldn't prevent them from encouraging those activities, but just watching it, I feel like I think that's almost impossible to fine someone for watching something.
Okay, that's it then. I think we've gone around.
To that, I think in the schools, if you're a bystander and don't do anything about it, you also get some punishment for that.
And we should have a bylaw, you have to intervene, but watching it.
Yes, it encourages.
Yeah, I think the general intent is watching is a form of encouragement, and so I think we can look at the language, but the intent is if you're encouraging that type of activity, you're at fault. And so, but I think yes, we do have to be cautious about the language and the definitions, those types of things. So, but
Okay, that's it.
I was just going to make one last comment. Is like, I know I look young, Councillor Curry, but that was actually me you passed on the trail this morning. So.
I thought you were coming at me, but.
Okay, moving on then. School resource officer position funding agreement.
Again, like the recommendations there, the SRO position has been very successful. Really, we're looking for direction from the committee to be able to move forward in approaching the schools to get a 3-year commitment on this project.
Well, I know we talked to both school boards and that, and they agreed it was also a good position to have. They'd like to continue it on, and I know we'd like to continue it on, so I have no problem going with this 3-year with the breakdown we have of it. I think it's good. It's proven to be good to the schools and stuff like that, and especially when you see the kids getting their awards and they're smiling, they talk about it, the positive ticking they're doing and that. I think it's a great deal, so I fully support what you have here. Mayor Zahara?
Yeah, just a point of clarification through the chair. So the town of Edson portion 50%, do we utilize some of the revenue sharing for that town of Edson portion, or does Yellowhead County provide any funding for this?
Yeah, I think that we haven't formally indicated that. That comes from Yellowhead County, but we had generally suggested that they are very supportive of us in many different ways, and so we consider our support of that project reflective of Yellowhead County's general support for the community.
Good. Okay, that's it. Great. Moving on. International sundry questions from media and public regarding items from this committee of the whole.
I see we have 2 new people. You have new questions for us?
I have one question. I was wondering for the Kinman Park. You said for the Ford Rubber, the previous budget was $150,000. I was wondering, is it the same budget for the wood fibers, or?
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, no, our intent is not to change the budget, just to change some of the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Anybody else? No? Great. Thank you very much. Okay, next one, we have an in-camera item, third-party contract discussions. Motion go in camera?
I wonder, I'm just questioning, should I excuse myself before going in camera or after?
Do you know what we're talking about?
Motion to go in camera. All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
I can't go to work. Oh, I vote.
Motion to adjourn? Councilor Wilk, all in favor?
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Yeah.